Hey, this is Coach Tim, Spider Cave Studios, Torrance, California, and I have a great guest, a world-known bodybuilder, expert, trainer of champions, ex-football player from a long time ago. That's one of the things I love saying because I love football. You know that. But I got a guy here, Leo Costa, who is going to talk about not bodybuilding per se, but how bodybuilding actually saved his life from 3 strokes. Tell us how that works, Leo.
Well, Tim, thanks for having me on. This is our second time around. See if we can make this one work. Second time's a charm.
That's right.
Yeah, I 13 years ago, I had 3 strokes in 3 weeks, and to say that it was a wake up call in my life is an understatement for sure. Me thinking, I mean, I would have never when it was happening to me. I still remember the day as it was very traumatic. I didn't know what the hell was going on. I was training a client. Had one of my feet up on a bench and I had my arms across the body and I was getting him instruction. And the next thing I know, something like just jolted me. And I thought to myself, what the hell was that? It was one of those things where I've never felt that before. But I don't know. I just thought, well, the athlete in me. I just thought, well, let me just see how this, shake it off a little bit,
Work through it.
work through it. That was my first thing I thought about until I took my foot off the bench and I couldn't find the floor with my foot. It's an odd feeling. I had to look to see where the ground was to put my foot down, and then it was like it was like dominoes falling. It was like that's the first thing that happened to me, and then I had my hand. I remember on the bar, I thought it had the bench with the free bar on it, and I had my hand on it, and all of a sudden my hand just fell off the bar. So that was the next thing. It was like this. All of a sudden I started losing function, and I thought, whoa, that started scaring me. So for the life of me, I would have never thought a stroke, not in 100 years. Me, a bodybuilder, an athlete, no way. I don't know. So I didn't feel right. I decided to go home and I drove about 10 miles home, which I probably shouldn't have. As I was driving, I could feel my vision was going and I was in
Oh,
trouble.
Lord.
Yeah. And I got into my house, and just as I walked in the back door, I fell on the floor. My wife had to come get me and help pick me up. And it was the weirdest thing. I just sat there. My wife wanted to call somebody, ambulance or something, and I'm stubborn. And I kept saying, just let me, you know. And I was speaking Portuguese. Portuguese is actually my first language. I learned Portuguese when I was young, and then English is my second language.
So
And my
you
wife,
flipped,
yeah,
you didn't know?
nope. And my wife said I was speaking Portuguese to her, very fluent, and I had no idea that
Oh, my
happened.
God.
But the long story short is finally my oldest son came over to the house and they called the ambulance. Fortunately, because I just kept telling him, just let me be, let me just get over this. And they called the ambulance. I got to the hospital within 4 hours, because that's a window for people who have stroke out there. If it ever happens to you, that's a window, because before 4 hours, they can still do things like a TPA. It's a clot busting medication, which I was able to take, and it just gives you a much better chance to recover, basically. So I got there, and that's when they ran all these tests on me, and they said, "Yeah, you've had 2 strokes back to back." And then that's when they started telling me things about this TPA, and things like, if it works for you, they inject you with something. If it works for you, the paralysis that you're experiencing right now will go away like it never happened to you. If it doesn't, it could kill you. That's a hell of a thing to have to deal with. I have my kids there. I felt bad for them, but I already knew. I told them in the best way that I could, because I wasn't talking too well. I didn't want to be like I was in that condition. So I just told them, give it to me. I guess what happens is, if you have, because they asked me, have you had like a pulled muscle or anything like that? Because I guess when you pull a muscle, a certain amount of bleeding happens. And they said that's how that could possibly kill you, because you bleed out. So there's a chance there. And I took a chance, and lo and behold, in 2 3 days, I was in the hospital. I was like, it never happened. It was weird. Never happened. I went home on the fourth day, and the doctors told me, they said, look, we don't really know exactly why this happened to you. Your tests that we took on you, or it doesn't really indicate anything, which was almost worse news in a way. It's like, really? What am I supposed to do with that diagnosis or prognosis or whatever you're giving me?
Right. Right.
It's like you don't know how it happened, and so there's where my journey began. I just the first thing that I had to do was I had to learn everything that I could about stroke. That was my enemy. That was my foe, and I had to know everything about it, even if I didn't want to know about it. It was something I just had to face, and I started, learning things like, one of the biggest reasons why people have a stroke is because of chronic high blood pressure. And at that time, I was bodybuilding. I was a couple of months, I was a month or so away from a show. And look, when bodybuilding is an extreme sport, we all know that, and we are at risk for stuff like this potentially. I was heavier, more muscle, but that puts more stress on your body. I'm older. I was 53, I think, then at that point. So I'm older. I'm older. I'm heavier. I'm training like a wild man. I was really into it. I was, but all that stuff probably has something to do with the fact that I was living my life in extreme behavior. So it could have had something to do with it. I'm not going to deny that. But I think, well, anyway, so, I learned about stroke. I learned when I was trying to, because the doctors set me up for an appointment to go to a physical therapist, and I went to see them. And after the first visit, I knew that I wasn't going to go back because the guy was not speaking my language. He was saying things like, Mr. Costa, we want to make sure that we get you back to functional. And my goal for myself was to be at 100% recovered. So I never came back to the guy, and I relied on my background in bodybuilding. This is where I talk about bodybuilding saved my life because, as you know, Tim, a bodybuilder who's a student of the game, and there's enough of us out there. When you're a student of the game, you have an intimate relationship with every single muscle in your body, and not too many people know that unless they are a student of the game and they've had already enough years underneath their belt where they've tried everything with nutrition and with training, and like Einstein said, true knowledge is through experience. And so I made a controversial call. It really irritated my wife. It scared her. And I said, I'm just going to rehab myself. So she was my physical therapist. I told her, when I went to Bulgaria a few years back, one of the things I learned over there was all about the mind and muscle connection and how your body works in 21-day increments. Like when you do a regimen for 21 days, that's when your body starts entering a plateau. That's not a bad thing. It's just that it takes 21 days for your body to adapt to an environment. So I just used all that information that I got there. I had my wife, we started with my arm because it was totally paralyzed. And she would just grab my arm and pull my hand towards me like I was doing a curl. I couldn't do it at all. All I was doing was watching that motion. I wanted to test my theory. And no kidding, around 21 days of her doing that with me every morning, all of a sudden, it's like I knew that my mind was going to connect to that muscle, and sure as hell did. That day, it's like, when you just know something. That morning, I connected to my arm. I knew at that point that I had a chance. It was now up to me. What was I dedicated to be willing to do to get myself back? And I can assure you something. Unfortunately, the stroke recovery rate for people who have stroke is very low. Only 10% make an almost 100% recovery. And you think about that, that's horrifying because 90% of other people are left to be taken care of by somebody else for the rest of their lives. It's a really bad outcome, a bad recovery. But I knew at that point when I connected, my body was working like it was supposed to. That's the way the physiology works. My mind connected to the muscle. So if it wasn't for the information and knowledge that I had as a bodybuilder, knowledge I got from Bulgaria, I applied it to my goal obviously changed in that I couldn't train like a bodybuilder because I was paralyzed, but I could still do certain movements if I had help to get me going. And that's exactly what I did. So bodybuilding has saved me in a lot of ways. And, you know, one of the things that bodybuilding does do, it forces you to do, if you're in it all the way like I was, it forces you to develop discipline, daily habits, discipline that turns into lifestyle rituals. It just does that. And I got to tell you, when I went on the road, because I was curious as to why the recovery rate for people was so bad, I wanted to see and see what was going on out there. And what I realized is I was talking to all these stroke survivor support groups. So I was talking to people that have strokes. I would tell you that a large percentage of these people gave up because it's the kind of thing that beats you down on a daily basis. You know, one day I remember I could maybe do 2 or 3 reps only. The next day, if I tried to do that same movement, I couldn't do it at all. I mean, it messes with your mind that way. But bodybuilding, because we know that bodybuilding is a marathon, not a sprint, I was in for the long haul. So that's why, you know, there's one of the reasons why people didn't make a better recovery, along with insurance companies cutting people off too soon. You know, they tell people, okay, that's enough. We can't allow any more visits with your physical therapist, but get your doctor to write you a script, and then you go and do it on your own. That's a joke. It's a big joke. You know, it's hard enough for people who are healthy to go into a gym by themselves and work out,
Well,
let alone.
am I too far off? I mean, you kind of said it, but really, I know how we met is buying years ago, buying into your stuff you brought back from Bulgaria. That's how I know you originally. And what I always loved about your manuals, and this was for bodybuilding, is like there's little like knobs, right, that you're messing with, and if you will. And the longer I got to know the discipline myself and know you, I realized actually, okay, what does this knob do? What does this knob do? And that's what an athlete does. I mean, I know as a football player way 100 million years ago with leather helmets, that's what I did. What if I did this? What if I did? And then I could see how you go from football into bodybuilding and you just lop onto it because you're all over these knobs. So it's a no-brainer when you have the stroke that that's where you're going to go. If
Yeah,
okay, I'll just go with what I was trained to do. It's just another athletic event. Is
yeah.
is is that crazy to say that?
No, no, it is. It's a big time. It's like the biggest game I was playing. I had never been in something that hard to do and that hard to master because of what I've just told you. One day I was pretty successful. The next day it was like I never even did any rehab for the body part, and it was just, and then that was just for one body part. The whole body had to be rehabbed like that. So
Yeah.
yeah, if it wasn't for sport to begin with, for sure, been an athlete since 8 years of age, but especially bodybuilding because you know this, it's the discipline is just unrelenting, unwavering if you want to do it right.
Yeah.
And so that's, like I said, it's saved me in so many ways. Throughout my whole life, I'm now 69, and I'm still getting huge benefits from it.
And you're jacked.
And like I said in one of my posts, the only difference between me now at 69, because I'm at my high school body weight. I've been messing around with dieting, and I'm still playing around with those dials. So I'm like in my own head. I originally started cutting 41 pounds ago. I use different things now for shows. I'm not going to go compete in a show. There was a wedding that I was going to go to. So the wedding was my competition. I was getting ready for that wedding. You know what I mean? That's what I do now. But anyway, it's like now, 69 years of age, my high school body weight was around 200 pounds, 195 to 200. I'm right now on Friday, 199. But the only difference is now from when I was 18 years of age, I'm carrying a hell of a lot more muscle now than I was when I was 18.
Right. Right.
So
I was
that's
going to
kind of
say that.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That rocks.
Yeah.
So you have a hell of a message of hope because you're coming from a different perspective on this as an athlete who has beat it, right? Now, just to be fair, when I first talked to you about this years ago, you said that you can still tell it ain't 100% right, right?
Yeah.
You use the arm curl as an example, but so you're not 100%, but I wouldn't know the difference looking at you.
Nobody does. It's something that I know because of that intimate relationship. I know my body. Nobody else does. You know. So you might say it's a new normal, new 100% recovery. But when you think about it, as an athlete, because I know this, when I've gotten hurt as an athlete, if I've twisted my ankle, I'm never really quite the same as I was before I got injured. I'm 100% enough to play competitively, but I don't think you really ever get back to the way you were. You just adapt to a new level of
Yeah,
100%. I don't know. That's just my own
yeah,
opinion of
I
that.
agree.
But you're right. Yes, I know I'm hard on myself, but I have to realize that the fact that I'm narcissistic and I'm vain to a large degree, I'm conscious of that people can tell, and the truth is sometimes you just can't put that much value in what other people think about you. You just go about your business. But yes, it's no one knows really at all. uh I do, and that keeps me going. And I got to tell you, one of the things that going back to the reason why people don't make a better recovery, it was also about information that doctors, at least 13 years ago, I think it's changed a little bit now. I'm not sure, but basically one of the things they said to these people that were trying to recover from stroke, they said after about 8 months, you're as good as you're going to get. And I think that was something that, well, first of all, it wasn't true. And the fact that you tell that to somebody when they get to that point, it's like, well, why the hell do it anymore? I'm done.
But I
And
know
then
I know you enough that piss you off,
yeah, it did. And so well, I'm going to
right?
show them.
Yeah,
I'm going to, yeah. And the truth of the matter is, I got results on a regular basis. I call them breakthroughs. I got results, oh, 3, 4, 5 years, 6 years. My breakthroughs, there were fewer and fewer because I didn't have as much to. It's like the person that loses the last 5 pounds compared to the last 50 pounds,
right.
you know. But I just recently had another breakthrough. I mean, I know it, nobody else does, but I can feel it in the way my body moves. And it just happened probably I think about a month ago. It was just something else that just opened up a channel, something happened,
So
it opened up.
let me ask you this, because as you know, I've coached football off and on over the years on the side, uh, besides digital marketing. One of the things that I've gotten really cognizant of is small wins, right? And celebrating small wins. I learned
Right,
that from Jim Morris the first time I heard that. We celebrate small wins.
right.
And so what do you do when you have that sort of breakthrough? Do you think special? Is there a routine that you want to celebrate with?
I no, I totally agree with what you're saying. These little small wins that I get, they're huge, and I do celebrate them. For 24 hours, it's like this is a big deal.
See,
And
yeah,
I tell people that because I work with stroke people here at the gym, and I tell them that the small wins are huge for you. You're not comparing an apple to an apple, but even so, you should celebrate the small wins because they end up becoming big wins down the road. If you combine them all up, they turn into a huge win.
right.
But yeah, I celebrate that thing, and every time I get it, I got to tell you, it almost brings me to tears. To be quite honest with you, because it's that it's that traumatic in a way,
Yeah,
in
yeah.
a good way. Um, but yeah, one of the other things, Tim, too, talking about that mindset, I always make sure that the people that I'm working with in here, I get them out of victim mode right away. You're not a victim. I'm not going to treat you like a victim. I'm going to treat you like an athlete because too many
That's
people
awesome.
feel sorry for themselves.
Yep.
Oh, poor me. No, I changed that narrative. You're not a victim now anymore in here. I don't care if you're impaired. You're not a victim. Okay. We're going to treat you differently. And people, I think they respond really well to that, you know. But I got to tell you something. You know, the three strokes really woke me up uh, because of the fact that I did, I wanted to find out how I can help people get a better outcome. And this is kind of where I'm at today now. I talk about stated goals are all temporary. They change on a regular basis. You'll never have one stated goal, I don't think, that you'll make that lasts for the rest of your life. So you got to get used to developing new stated goals based on what your goal really is. That's uncomfortable for people because change is uncomfortable when you do that. I understand that. And this is where I talk about you have to learn how to be comfortable in uncomfortable situations. In other words, your goal is going to change. It did for me. My goal before that happened, before my strokes happened, at that point, even at the age of 53, I was a maniac about putting on as much muscle mass as humanly possible. That's just been my mindset. I like that look. I like getting big, but I had to change my goal. And this is where I'm at now. A chapter in my life was I changed my goal from wanting to put on as much muscle mass as humanly possible to making myself a promise that I would become as healthy as I possibly could. Healthy was the key word. I promised myself because I said, for a lot of years as an athlete, you abuse your body. Well, you overtrain it. All of us do as athletes, and bodybuilding is especially sometimes, And I thought, my body actually, all things considered, it took care of me pretty well. I had this thing happen to me. So I'm gonna make a promise and take good care of it now and become very healthy for my body. I'm gonna give it a chance now, to heal itself. I thought it at least deserved that. That's the goal that I made.
Right.
So I ended up, and again, I had a very good outcome with my recovery. So what I ended up doing is carving a pathway through all this, and basically I developed a step-by-step process with things that have been tried and tested in the trenches. And it's very specific for the person who is really serious about developing ultimate health. That's my key word now, ultimate health and well-being. Ultimate health and well-being to me means mind and body and mind. So I've created a pathway for people with a step-by-step that creates ultimate health. I can show them the way now because of all the stuff that I've learned in my 13 years getting over the stroke and just learning about how your body really can perform. Again, firsthand experience is very difficult to replace. I don't think there's anyone much better to tell them how to get over this and the steps than someone like me, who's been in the, who's had this happen not only one time but three. I really shouldn't be here, I guess, because doctors said I shouldn't. Having 3 in 3 weeks, pretty dramatic. To overcome that, and then to, when the doctors are calling me a miracle and asking me, how did you recover? We want to know so we can tell our patients, that turned me on to that. Turned me on to thinking, okay, maybe I can, here's my new calling. And I can do this now for people because 80% of strokes, for example, is preventable. 80%. It's hard to get people to understand. It's really frustrating. And I'm that way. We're all that way. Human nature, we don't really want to face up to this. Where we said, it's not going to happen to me. We're in denial a little bit. And we don't pay attention sometimes to the signs that your body is sending you. My body was, I'm sure, sending me signals that I was just overdoing it. I remember, now that I'm talking to you, I remember after workouts, I was so exhausted from the workout. I would have to sleep in my car for a couple of hours just to recover. That's just not normal, to do that over and over again. So anyway, again, getting back to where I'm at right now with my life and what I want to do and where I think I can be relevant is help people just become a better version of themselves and help them create ultimate health and well-being. And I got to tell you something. When you look at what's going on in our country right now, we're a sick country, and it's based on stats. 75% of Americans have a chronic illness. 75. 61% of people in the United States have a risk factor. Risk factors are really key in whether or not how exposed you are to heart disease and to strokes and the things that happen like this. 61 have already one risk factor. 27% have multiple risk factors. It gets worse. And this is not a scare tactic. It's a reality check. When you look at our age groups between 2 and 19, our babies, our adolescents, 1 in 5 have obesity, which is a risk factor that leads to heart disease. 25% of people that are out there in the US will have a stroke in their lifetime. This is not a scare tactic. It's a reality. It happens every freaking year. My goal is to change that dynamic. 80% is preventable. Let's do that. Let's get ahead of our health. Why don't we take that path? So that's where I'm at now, to help people become better versions of themselves. It's a game changer, man. I know, because it changed my life. I'm living a life right now that I could go down tomorrow. But the way that I feel now, Tim, I've not felt any better in any age that I've been. Be honest.
You're what, 69? You're
69.
You're an inspiration to everybody. Here you are talking about this stuff, and you talked about goals a second ago. Obviously, you're stacking goals right now, and you're at 69. You're not stopping anytime soon. So
right.
I'd love people to be able to get in touch with you. How do they get in touch with you? And how do they tap into what you have to offer to the world?
Yeah, I'm glad that you asked that, because I've been shooting video almost daily, all focusing around this. If you go to my website, leocostajr.com, there is a free questionnaire there. You fill it out. It's free. You send it to me. I look at it. I can help you. I can make you understand how exposed you really are to any kind of heart disease, any kind of stroke. I can already tell you about yourself right there in that free questionnaire. And I tell people, look, I'm trying to get people to get off their asses to be proactive, because you know what? I can't do it for them. They have to be a willing participant. The first step for them is to take action and go to my website. Be proactive. You don't have to pay for the questionnaire. Fill it out. I'll call you. I'll talk. In fact, I have one today that just reached out to me, and I'll give you a consultation. I'll tell you what you have to do to get on the right path. But at the end of the day,
everybody needs a coach, and you're their coach.
I'm their coach, and but you have to be.
And you had coaches. I'm sorry to cut you. You had coaches that brought you to the dance, right?
Absolutely. And when I was training for bodybuilding, I had training partners. They're essentially their coach in essence, So yes, it's always better if you have somebody that's in your corner. They're right there with you, So yes, I'm your coach. I'm the person that's going to shorten your learning curve. I can get you in 3 hours or less a week. For the people that are listening out there, in 3 hours, as little as 3 hours a week, I can put you on a step-by-step program that's going to create and produce results at will, pretty immediate, because we're shortening that learning curve. I've made all the mistakes. I've done them all. I know what works from firsthand experience. So this is what I'm so fired up about. And I get really, always frustrated when people just won't take that step. So I urge them, this is a journey that we're both going on. Is it worth it to you to create ultimate health and well-being?
And you, I can say, just from absorbing and consuming your materials over the years, you are extremely a good coach and very, very approachable. It's not like you're intimidating to anybody. You work with women, you work with men, right? Athletes, all the whole spectrum. There's no intimidation here. That you're very, very approachable.
Yeah, just what's your goal, and it's like building a house. This foundation that I'm talking about is this three-step process. That's your foundation. We build a strong foundation, like you build a strong foundation for a structure that you build. And then on top of that, we're using the three components that are responsible for changing your body in the most efficient way. Then it's identifying what your goal is. This is that step-by-step process that's done in a very specific way, and that's the reason why it produces results at will. So I keep hammering this away, hoping people will listen to that. And my next chapter in life now, Tim, is I want to go out and speak to huge audiences. It can be smaller, but I want to speak to audiences all over the world and tell them this story. not just to scare them with stats about stroke, but just create that ultimate health. I think that's where it's at. If you feel good and you create that, everything else is, you can do just about what you want because you're in a good shape that way.
Right. There's hope. There's always hope. There's always
Absolutely.
a way. Hey, Leo, can you give your information out just one more time before we close this out?
Yes. Please go to my website at leocostajr.com. On the front page of that website, you'll see a questionnaire. Fill it out, send it to me, reach out to me. If you don't want to fill it out, reach out to me. We'll have a consultation. I'll find out what your goal is, and we'll get you on the right path. And then it's just a matter of you, hanging in there and letting me be your partner. It's as good as that.
Well, Leo, I'll tell you, I enjoyed this conversation with you as always. Selfishly, when I had the chance to talk with you again, I wanted to meet with you. So I appreciate your time.
I appreciate you having me on. Like I said, I hope people are listening. I'm sure they are. And I appreciate you having me on. Take care, man.
Talk to you soon.
And the doctors, they came in and they took all these tests on me and they said, why are you even here? You shouldn't be here.
Come on.
I was 2 months away from the biggest competition of my bodybuilding career. At the time, I was living my life at very extreme levels.
Ready? Go. Yeah. That's your body, man.
That's when the unthinkable happened. I had 3 strokes in 3 weeks that left me paralyzed. Adversity, what I've learned, does one of two things. It either destroys you or defines you. It really is up to you. The doctor came in and looked at me and said, "You are a miracle. And your story needs to be told. And I can learn from you. I need to learn from you," he said. "And the minute your book comes out, I want that because I can teach my people all about it." I want to give people the tools to overcome adversity and success.